First of all, I just want to go over some of the things that we all use to store, particularly our covers. And I'm sorry that this focuses so much on covers. I had to ask myself as I was preparing how to put things on a page. Does anybody exhibit stamps anymore? That's a rhetorical question, because when you go to stamp shows, unless it's a huge show where there might be 2 or 3 or 4 stamp exhibits, you rarely see stamp exhibits. So, yes, sir.
Well, just a note, even thinking when I did my presentation here, somebody noticed, oh, it's missing a stamp here. If you're gonna do stamps, it has to be complete, whereas covers, you put it what you want it to.
Right. Okay, so I just wanted to go over quickly to storing your covers. If you're a beginning collector, it won't take long before you need one of these boxes, because they're a nice, convenient way to store a lot of covers. And I only need to look at my bookcases to know how big my collection's got over the years. So these are readily available. These are Vario pages. The 2 here have a back side, so you can store 4 covers. And on my sheet, I kind of reversed it, but don't worry about that. And on this one, you can also put a page of something, like if you have a letter that you want to show in your exhibit, or just keep it in your collection. These here, and they can be got from bcw.com, are the same thing, only they make ones for number 10 envelopes. And it's a little bit bigger, so when you put them in your 3-ring binder, they stick out a little bit. But I'm just showing you these as a way to keep your covers. I keep all mine in a sleeve, and I use a pretty archival sleeve. You can also buy sleeves that aren't archival, but they're very nice and they're cheaper, and they fit in all these boxes, okay? Organize before you start mounting. You know, what I do is I always put my covers in either this or this. And this is handy if you have covers that have something on the back. For instance, registered covers are going to have a registry mark on the back. First flight covers often have a receipt from where they were flown to on the back. So my 3-ring binders is a combination of both of these. If they have something on the back, I don't want to have to pull it out and look at it. I know that I have it on a sleeve that can show it. When I first started exhibiting, I didn't have all these frames in my basement, which I do now. I don't have all these, but I have about 6 of them. I would lay my pages out on a double bed. We still had a double bed. Most people don't have that anymore, but it just fits nicely on a double bed. So you could stand back and you could look at your exhibit as it will look in the frame. And that really helps you with where you position the covers in the overall exhibit. You could also do it on your kitchen counter, on your dining room table, but it's well worth doing that. I used to try just putting them in a 3-ring binder, and by the time I got to the 8th page, I kind of forgot how that flow came from the earlier pages. Mounting. I use 80-pound paper, and if you want to get one of these later, I brought a few pages to pass out. If you use regular bond paper, once you mount the cover, you need to put it into some kind of stiff insert, or whatever you call that, because it'll flop around. Whereas on an 80-pound paper, it'll stay stiff. It makes it easy to put it in one of these sleeves. It makes it easy to, when you're taking it in and out of frames, it doesn't flop around and it's pretty stiff. Dan was talking to me the other day about this, and he mentioned that some printers won't print 80-pound paper. So, you know, you may have to experiment. Dan uses 60. My printer has always been okay with 80, so I use 80-pound, plus I have a lot of it, especially this size paper. You know, when you go to buy these, well, you can buy 8 at a time or 10 at a time. If you buy a ream, they'll last you a lifetime unless you're my age. And then there may be some left over. Photos or how to mount covers. I buy these photos at the camera shop on Odana Road. 500 of them, and you'd be amazed at how quickly you go through 500 of these. But they're really easy. You take them out with a tong, you put them right on your cover, and you lay them on the sheet. And whereas the bigger ones that are sold by G&K, one of the philatelic supply companies, if you have a big fat envelope that maybe has something in it and you just want to keep it in there, you can get these size, but I find these very difficult to deal with. You have to peel something off the back, you have to handle it with your hands, whereas this, you just take it off with your tongs, your hands don't really have to touch it. Maybe they do occasionally, but that. So those are the photo corners that I use. If I have a letter or something, I still use photo corners. I don't know how the rest of you are doing it, but that's my suggestion. These are also available on Amazon, and they're not terribly expensive. I don't remember what they are offhand. Hinges. And I comment here, I say, does anyone show stamps anymore? So I'm not gonna spend any time on hinges. If you wanna pay your $20 for a half a packet of, what are they? Denison hinges, well, welcome to it. You won't get any competition from me. Writing and describing.
Well, okay, just intersect.
Yeah.
Because I've used almost all stamps and knot covers. Whatever mounts, if you're using mounts, I use Howard mounts. And, but Scott mounts and protects the stamp and goes right on the page. And again, when you put them, slide them into the plastic folder, they keep very well. And so when I'm centering them, I lay the page down and I have the set, and you hopefully have all the stamps and aren't missing one. And you put it down, or the individual stamp or souvenir sheet. Yeah, I just use regular mounts that I use all the time. So
I have one exhibit where I show stamps and I also use mounts. So I use Microsoft Word now. I used to use Publisher, but they no longer support Publisher as of last December. So I now use Microsoft Word, and you can pretty much do anything you want to do with Microsoft Word. Some people use InDesign. I don't know how to use InDesign. I think Microsoft Word is pretty simple to use once you get used to it. And I'm sure I still only use 15% of everything Microsoft Word has to offer. If you can believe it, this tells you something about my computer literacy. I only learned about a year ago that when you have a word and you're not sure of the spelling, if you click on it, Microsoft Word tells you what the spelling is, and they fix it. I used to go to my dictionary and look it up, and but anyway, for those of you who still have dictionaries. Printing size. I use Times New Roman 12. I have used Times New Roman 10. A lot of complaining about judges. Most judges are old, and putting it in a 10 font is kind of small. But if you're trying to put a lot of print in a small space, you might be tempted to use a smaller font. I also use a font called Bookman Old Style, which you can use the 12 font, but I don't know how this can be, but anyway, it takes up less space than Times New Roman, so you can put more letters on a line with Bookman Old Style, and it still looks pretty readable. I don't quite know how they calculate all that, but. Title page. Statement of purpose. What's your story? I have on the sheet, that's a topic for a later day. It's a pretty lengthy topic, and for those of you who are doing 4 pages, maybe we don't need to address that today, although I'd be happy to on an individual basis. It's important to start thinking about how you're going to say what your exhibit's about. Although for what we're doing here in the club, that's not such a big deal, I don't think, yet.
I would say though that having a title and some idea of what you're going to talk about is it helps you get organized yourself and helps you put things in an understandable manner. So a title and eventually an outline is a good idea. You can always change it, but at least have a flow.
A good example of that is, recently with a co-author published a book through the Chicago Collectors Club on the 1948 Wisconsin stamp and its first day covers. And our big focus was describing all the cachets. Well, when the judges, was that in Chicago?
Mhm.
Yeah, when the judges in Chicago last November looked at our book, one of the critiques was, this book is all about cachets, but nowhere do you say cachet in the title. Whoops, you know, I never thought of that, nor did our editor. So anyway, the point is, judges will look at the title very carefully, and if you say you're going to include something, or your title suggests you include something, but it's not there, they'll look at that. And so, it's important to start thinking about the title, I agree with that. Page headings, that's another topic that we can talk about some other day, but you need to start thinking about what's on this page and what do I want to tell somebody looking at it. It's usually on the left you have some broader heading that covers a few pages, and on this part of the other side, on the right hand side, you usually put what's exactly on that page. But again, yes sir?
So your description of your header, you wanna go what point value? You talked about normally you read it at 12, but does the header wanna be 14?
Yeah, usually I put it at 14, yeah.
14?
And you can play with that a little bit. Some people put italics, some people put them in a different color.
Bold.
Some people, instead of bold, they kind of lighten it. I mean, there's all that to play with.
Okay.
Particularly as your exhibit gets bigger. You want the judges to be able to find anything in your exhibit. And if it's 10 pages or 10 frames, and these judges are pretty old, they want to be able to look and see that section 3 is about cats and dogs. Well, they want to go down there and they want to see a heading that says cats and dogs. They don't want to look at the whole thing and can't find cats and dogs. God bless the old people. Explaining the cover itself. So those of you who are preparing an exhibit can use this. Sometimes you'll put the date it was sent and the date it was received. Where did it originate and where did it go, particularly if it's postal history. If it's a first day cover, you want to maybe say something about the cachet maker. You want to say something about how many you think were made first day covers. All that information is available. And usually that goes above or below the cover. You want to say something about the cachet maker. I always put the cachet maker's name right here, JD. And over here I say, this is a commercial cover, which means it was regularly available to people from this cachet maker. And the types, it is done in typographic, it's a typography printing of the cachet. So that's for a first day cover exhibit. If yours is different, if yours is topical, you know, you might, I don't know how we do this in biology, but we might have the genus here and the phylum here or whatever. I don't know what those words mean anymore. You also want to show, you also want to speak to any markings on the cover. I don't know if I brought any here, but the thing that comes closest to a marking is this Christmas seal. So I mean, you might want to say this is a, you know, Christmas seal and so many were printed or whatever. But if there's any kind of postal marking, I can't believe there's not on any of these, but there isn't. You want to explain what that marking is, how common it is, how rare it is. Borders, color and width. This is the only cover here that has a border. And if you look at it later, you probably can't see it from where you're sitting. I put it in a double line and it's red. I also describe in the red type below why I put that there. Because the judge wants to know, what's so hot about this cover? Why'd you put a red around it? So I make sure that the type area corresponds in color to what I did here. Some people put all their covers on construction paper behind the cover. Very tedious. I tried doing that and I'm I don't have enough years left in my life to want to do it. So, I mean, it's very tedious. Some put construction paper behind the cover only for those that they want to draw attention to. But again, some people put thicker lines than this, so they really stand out. And
So a lot of people will have a black box around any cover, and then if it's a special cover, like John said, then they will make it a wider box or a red box or green or something, and then you put a note saying these are special items one way or another.
right, all the rest of these covers have red boxes about them, except these. These are just in a sleeve. But this cover, there's this pretty white. If you put that against white pages, it doesn't stand out too much. So if you're dealing with a cover that just blends in with the white of the page, it's nice to put a box around it. It just kind of brings it to the viewer's attention a little bit better.
And in Word, InDesign, or PowerPoint, you can print boxes on a page and then just mount your cover or your stamp within that printed box.
And you know, for the longest time, I didn't know you could do that. So, so I would draw a box, I'd measure a cover, I'd draw a box, and then I would spend endless amounts of time adjusting the size of the box so that it fit just around the cover, till I realized I could put the box there, go to my file of photographs, and just click it and go, bap, right there. I mean, it's amazing how much time Dan saved me when he taught me that little trick. Conclusions. The conclusion of your exhibit. Just like you learned in 11th grade, writing a story of a beginning and a conclusion. Judges look for a conclusion. So for instance, in this exhibit, which is the evolution of airmail from the US to Bermuda, the conclusion of this was, actually it was in this exhibit, the conclusion was the airplane, this single airplane, there was only one, that was carrying all these covers back and forth, crashed at sea and sunk. What a conclusion. That's where I ended my exhibit, right? And sometimes it's not quite so clean. On a first day cover exhibit, if there was a stamp issued the day after your stamp was issued for the first day, it'd be nice to get a first day cover of that stamp and put it at the end. Or if you're doing with postal rates and you have 2-cent postal rates, and at the end you can put the 3-cent cover that maybe was issued the day after or when it came out. So that's what people try to do, find the stamp that followed the stamp you're talking about.
In the exhibit that I did on Dag Hammarskjöld, it was on his life. The way I organized it was the order in which countries responded to his death. So the exhibit was specifically stamps that were issued to remember Dag Hammarskjöld. And then in those stamps, I tried to tell the story of Dag Hammarskjöld because they're back. But on my final page, I had a block with no stamp. And I said, isn't it interesting? All these countries of the world have issued stamps in memory of Dag Hammarskjöld, except for Sweden, the country he was born in. And the next time I showed the exhibit, I had to change the page because they finally issued a stamp in a booklet remembering Dag Hammarskjöld. But so it was, I thought it was kind of neat. I don't know.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's just like I have a single page exhibit of a particular stamp they issued in Bermuda because they were running out of half-penny stamps at Christmas time that people used to mail their Christmas letters. So because the flying boat coming from Lisbon had mechanical problems, so they overprinted a local stamp. Well, my final page is when the stamps finally arrived, I show it the day they used the stamp they were waiting for, which was not overprinted. you know, judges didn't particularly like it, but I did. And, you know, and once you get to the point where people are critiquing your exhibit, it's more than having thick skin. You have to take their comments as their interest in helping you produce a better exhibit. If you go into it thinking, especially after you've put in hours and hours and hours, you get it, right? Hours, preparing an exhibit, and you get a metal level that's lower than the one you were hoping for, you know, you're not gonna have a happy experience. So you have to go into it with, this is the best I can do now. Did they tell me anything that I could use to improve my exhibit? And after a while of exhibiting, if judges make a suggestion that you know you don't like and you won't do it, then don't. After a while, the metal level isn't so important as it is in the beginning, because everyone wants to get gold or large gold now. It used to just be gold, vermeil, silver. Now it's gold, large gold, no, large gold, gold, large vermeil, vermeil, large silver, and silver, and whatever else comes after.
Bronze.
I found-
Certificate of participation.
I only recently saw a certificate of participation. That's what they get if they don't even want to give you the lowest metal level. I only saw one, and it was recently. So, any questions? Yes, sir.
If you're citing information in your display, is it necessary or is it advantageous to give a literature reference source of where you got this information?
Yeah. When you submit your application to show your exhibit, you also submit a synopsis of your exhibit that the judge will read before they see your exhibit. Synopsis, and what's the other thing? Title page, and you submit your title page. If there's something that you really think it's important to tell the judge because he may have a question about it, then you could include it in your synopsis. But it's not gonna be like a footnote for all the things in your exhibit, because the synopsis is supposed to be a page, right? So if you're gonna say that this is the only one known, maybe you're gonna have to back that up somehow. And so for this one, I say, only known cover on this flight with a meter cancel. Now, I've been collecting Bermuda airmail for a lot of years, and I know a lot of buddies of mine who collect Bermuda airmail. So the best I was able to say was, after talking to, you know, the people who know this flight, it's the only meter that we know of. Sometimes you can, you know, be more clearly, if Scott says there's only 2 of them and you know where those 2 are and you have a third, I mean, that's a different level of proving. But you don't have to do too much of that. I think it's fair to say you better be sure that whatever you say is true, because they might say, oh,
But you
look
would
at-
generally put citations in the synopsis and not in the exhibit itself.
Right, right. I've seen judges, although pretty rare, say, if you say something's on the back of the cover but you don't show it, they wanna see the back of the cover. So you gotta open the frame, take it out. They don't do that too often. Most people who wanna show the back of a cover, they take a picture of that postmark and they you know, miniaturize it and they put it right next to the cover. And I also showed this here, just so you can see. You can put 4 regular size envelopes on a page, and I like that one because they're all different colors. It sort of gets the judge's attention, or the people who are looking at your exhibit. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I'm sort of curious why covers are the predominant material that are used. I mean, a lot of us just collect stamps.
Right.
And we're kind of feeling like, well, are we making a mistake because it's only part of the story, and the judges are really looking for the whole picture, which includes the covers. I mean, I just don't collect covers. So I'm kind of curious how that developed. Now mostly what you're gonna see are covers and exhibits.
Yeah.
I would say that there's a lot of exhibits about individual stamps at the WSP shows. Some on coils, Washington, Franklin, stamps of other, so there's a lot about individual stamps, and they show formats and errors. They might show usage, which would still involve a cover, but there's a lot of stamp ones. Having said that, there has been an increase in resurgence in postal history. And that's why now there are probably more exhibits in postal history. Just everything ebbs and flows a little bit. Back around the 80s and 70s, they were mainly stamp exhibits.
But even someone who shows a stamp exhibit is gonna show some on cover, some.
Generally.
Yeah, generally, right. And like Dan says, you know, for the longest time, first day covers were kind of poo-pooed by judges. And most people can remember the show and the date, I don't remember it, but they can remember the show and the date when the first time that a first day cover exhibit won the best in show. I can remember the day or the year at the Minnesota show, the first time that a postcard exhibit won best in show. Postcards used to be a separate, well, they are a separate hobby, but they were kind of brought under the umbrella of the APS in terms of exhibiting them. So you see a couple postcards exhibits, or a few, at every big show. But the first one that won large gold was probably about 7 or 8 years ago. Time goes by fast, so I don't remember exactly. But it was a woman from Finland, and she had an absolutely incredible,
gorgeous.
and the title was Paris by Night. And it was
Paris by Night, like 1907 to
Yeah.
it was like 5 or 7 years. I mean, this is what Paris looked like in that maybe decade.
And it was incredible. It was many, many frames, and we're all happy for her. Any other questions?
John,
Yeah.
I watched you put this together at Wisco-Pex maybe, so
Yeah.
anyway, it's quite a process to get this put into the framework and stuff. You have shown this a number of times.
Right.
Okay, I didn't quite understand that process even when I was watching you do it. So you're looking to improve the quality of your work based on the judge's suggestions of things that, or that you might add, you might get something new to add to it.
Right.
So, okay.
So the worst thing is when you have a 10-frame exhibit, if you're looking at 8.5 by 11 pages, 10-frame exhibits, 160 pages, right? All in separate individual sleeves. So when the judge has, I don't like your titles. Every page has something on the heading, right? Or I don't like your headings. So when they say something that you say, oh my God, I'll have to change all my headings. People used to number their pages, 1, 1.2, 3, 3.4, all of that. And when they didn't like your heading, you had to go back and change all that, the numbers and everything. That's a big job. I'm not sure I'd be willing to do that, so I tinker with it a little bit. The most common thing I change is when I get better material.
Okay.
So two things, I think. One thing is, a lot of people do show it multiple times. After you go to all the effort, you might as well put it in more than one show, because the bulk of the people who will see it at a show are those within a driving distance of that show. But the other thing is, personally, I look at doing it to help promote postal stationery, which is what I collect. So when I do an exhibit, I want to have it someplace on the East Coast, someplace in the Midwest, someplace on the West Coast. And again, the idea is to try to get different audiences. In fact, one of the radio announcers told me once, he said, you don't have to write a new story, you just have to change your audience.
And the way it works is when you
Same
want
with
to
sermons.
when you want to put your exhibit in the show will send you an application, and then you send back the application, your synopsis, and your title page. Why was I saying that? You have to say whether it was shown before, and have you made, the rules about you should make, 10% changes in your exhibit. But no one ever questions you about that. I mean, you probably are looking at your exhibit for the first time. So you can either bring your exhibit to the show, but you always have to go the day before when they mount the exhibit, so now you paid an extra hotel room. Or you can mail it, and nowadays, exhibitors are more and more reluctant to mail an exhibit, because they're expensive, they're valuable. And, it's tough, so, like these two, I don't know, it's you're giving him an exhibit to take to San Diego in a few months, and
Couple
there's
weeks.
more and more of that goes on.
He seemed reliable.
I don't know. I'm worried.
Um,
A couple of comments just to piggyback on that. I really, with the question, especially that Charlie brought up, you start with stamps, and then it kind of grows, and then for years I didn't like covers. I liked the symmetrical album pages. I didn't want to put one cover in there. I just threw them in a box for years.
And they take
And
so
then
much
pretty
space.
soon you get excited and realize, and all of a sudden, I now understand why postal history is so exciting, because instead of just a stamp, now you've got the stamp and all these other possibilities to tell the story. So covers become more popular. In the case, an example of how an exhibit grows, I had a one-page exhibit, mostly stamps, some covers, and the title was "The Accordion, Not for Polka Anymore," not just for polka anymore. Well, I'm redoing that exhibit, and that collection has grown in different topics, and so now I have to make adjustments. And so a lot of the times it grows because you're interested and you get new material, and that's so exciting. I got 2 new postcards this week of Tahitian women playing the accordion. Can you believe that? And I'll say one more thing on that to you postcard collectors. I was one of those poo-pod postcards there, and they are just vintage postcards, are absolutely fascinating. And I'm kind of narrowing down a collection of postcards in the 1900s, because these postcards are all around the world of different cultures playing the accordion, and I never would have assumed that, especially not in the early 1900s. And so you expand. So you go from stamps, but start with stamps. Don't let this or I'll never have an exhibit of 10 pages, 100, and it's not going to happen for me. But you just share your stamps and share the story.
Yeah, Dave.
Hey, John, great topic, but I was wondering, how would you exhibit a postcard from Bermuda? Because you have the postal stamp on the back and the image on the front.
Well, it depends on what side you're interested in.
So can you take say, for example, a photocopy or a clear image on the back and put it underneath? Or is that, you mentioned a little postmark,
Right.
but can you do the whole thing?
Well, for instance, in this exhibit here, the Royal Mail Ayrshire Cavalier was the one that traveled this route for about 3 years. I have a couple, one postcard and one photograph of that plane in the exhibit. I don't show the back of the postcard. There's nothing of interest. It's, dear Nellie, I'm having a great time in Bermuda or whatever. Unless there was some reason to show it. Now, if I was a deltiologist, I'd want to show the back, because the back tells me who made it and everything. And they, people who exhibit postcards, they can tell you more in that little space about that postcard than is imaginable. I just want to say one other thing. I brought this page here because if I were just using 8.5 by 11 pages, I'd have to get rid of 2 covers here. So when you use 11 by 17 or whatever that comes out to be, you've got more real estate to show material. So when I use these, I very often have 5 or 6 covers on that page. And it allows you to show more, and of course that's what you want to do. Yes?
Yeah, I just had a comment about the paper. A lot of printers will take 80 pound, and sometimes it's difficult with the 60 pound also. But I always used to tell the kids when they were doing exhibits, and I do it myself, just use regular 20 pound paper but go ahead and get some of the thicker cardstock, or 80 pound, 60 or 80 pound, and slide that into your three,
Yeah, into your sleeve.
top loading page
Right.
protector, slide it back. And then, I don't know if you still have to do that, you have to write your name and the, page number
I
on the
don't,
back.
I don't know the answer to that.
You don't do that anymore?
Well, you still put your name and, your
name
name and
and
address on the back of every page.
Yeah, right. So you've already got that. And
Right.
so you can always keep using that more
Right.
expensive
It's a very good point.
art paper.
It's a very good point.
I have a question. Thanks to Karen, probably 12 years ago, she convinced me to do what was a very small exhibit, I think for Wiscopex, I think it was. And it was on the Year of the Horse. And it was put into what is called a non-competitive. That was the only reason I was willing to do it,
Right.
is because I wasn't afraid that somebody was gonna write a big critique. I can't find it, unfortunately, I've lost it in the move, I guess. But it was an interesting thing to do, but the fact that I didn't have to fear the fact that it was competitive. Now, you guys, of course, have been
I
doing this for a
think we
long
do
time.
non-competitive at Wiscopex, which is not a World Series of Philately show, but in a WSP show, the frame.
Which stands for World Series of Philately.
Right. The frames are so sought after that there are no, what you call them, non-competitive exhibits.
Well, there just wouldn't be
And
room
in
for
some
it.
shows, like Chicago, NAPEX in Western Virginia, WestPEX in San Francisco, if you're gonna exhibit, as soon as they announce that they're taking applications, you gotta get on the stick, because 3 weeks later, they'll all be filled.
And
But
another
we're
thing
doing non-competitive in 2 weeks.
Right.
There'll be no judging of our exhibits here. We'll be sharing what you do with one another, and glad to take comments and,
Yeah.
but you don't have, you can, start. Yeah, non-competitive is a great way to start, and to see if you enjoy putting together. It involves research. It's one thing, it takes a little more time.
Right.
Because putting an exhibit together takes a little more time to do the research, and, if you get the postcard, so I got this vintage postcard, if I put it in my exhibit, I'm gonna have to put in what kind of postcard it is, which means and there's books, it's all there, you just gotta find it, and put it in, but it's a little more work, but then, when someone comes over, I can open the album up, and wouldn't you like to see?
Now, on the first time I showed this exhibit on Bermuda Airmail, the first flight that the plane took from Bermuda to New York, this is a British plane, somebody aboard had the good sense to take a cover that had a stamp, and it was stamped with the, proper cachet, and had everyone on the plane sign it. And somehow I got that cover, I don't remember where. So the challenge was, who are all these people? So on my exhibit, I have a little box with her name, and I was able to find all of them but 3. Part of it was deciphering a signature, and you know how that goes. And one of them, how many of you have ever bought ginger beer from Barrett's? Barrett's Ginger Beer, okay, over there in the bar. Barrett's is a Bermuda soda company, and I don't know how they got so into the US market, but Barrett's Ginger Beer. My sister happened to be married to a Bermudian who was some kind of relation to the Barrett family. So I got in touch with the Barrett family. I told them I had this cover. I thought it was the current Barrett's grandfather's. It turns out it was his great-grandfather. And I made a really professional copy of the cover and sent it to them, and it now hangs in their office in Bermuda. And I don't know where I got that cover, but it was fun tracking down who they were. Okay, anything
John?
else? Yeah.
This is something I didn't know. When you build an exhibit and take it in, there is a charge to you, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Which I did not know.
Yeah, there's an entry fee for, per page.
Did
per
we put
page.
that on our
Okay.
application?
I mean, for the people who are gonna show here in a.
They don't know, do they?
No, no. Yeah, there is a charge, and the charges aren't small. I mean, for a 10-frame exhibit, it's gonna be $100 or more,
Okay.
cause it's per page,
I thought it was,
or per frame, I'm sorry, per frame.
I thought it was just something that stamp shows did to pull in people, but it
Well,
helps
they
pay
have
for
to
the
pay,
stamp.
they have to pay
Yes.
to pull in people, that's why they charge dealers, they
Yes.
charge exhibitors, and you know, to rent a hotel these days is pretty
They
expensive.
pay the judges too.
Yeah, they pay the judges, they pay all the publicity. People complain about that occasionally, so I say to them, just do a single frame exhibit, you know, $15, yeah.
Do you ever run up into a situation where you're asked by a judge to get a particular aspect of this collection, but it's like $10,000 for that particular cover? I mean, something really expensive that you feel like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? How can I level up my collection?
Well, they're quick to tell you when you are missing something like that. And I'm guessing that might occur more in the stamp world than covers, although I'm not sure. You could speak to that. I mean, you can in postal stationery. You know, judges come in pretty well informed, even though they don't collect it, because they get your synopsis way ahead of the show, and then they do their research, so they can respond to your exhibit.
Yeah, you'd have to decide, is what's missing really integral to the story you're telling? And can you work around that, or can you define your title or your range such that that's less significant? But otherwise, like for instance, I do postal stationery. Well, some people say you need to have a Pony Express cover in there, which is a $15,000 or $20,000 item, and I don't. And you just talk about other places in the West and work around it.
In your synopsis, you could say, I know I don't have this item, and I don't because it's, you know, I don't have the money. However, you say that in a nice flowery way, right? So you don't sound poor. It's prohibitive. So, I mean, you can say that in your synopsis, and that says right up front, I know this exists, but I don't have it for whatever reason. They'll read that, but maybe they still hope someday you'll get it. And I don't think that would change your metal level too much. I don't think that would change your metal level.
So if you look at the point scoring system, you'll just lose a point or two. It's not out of 100. So it's not like they're gonna kick your exhibit out because you didn't have one thing.
And all of the time you spend on creating a visually attractive exhibit, it's worth 10% of your metal level. The big thing is the rarity in the material, how you present it. It's called treatment, which is a big point of contention among philatelists. What does that mean exactly? Because everybody seems to have a different view. Okay, it's 25 after the hour.
I got one more question.
Yeah, well, it's you getting married.
I'm curious about philatelic covers. And are first aid covers considered philatelic?
Well, they aren't because they now have been, they now have a category in the judging manual. Okay, but for a long time, they are philatelic covers, no doubt about that.
Right.
But that's a category. So
there is a category for first aid covers, you can include them, but most other covers, and again, it depends. I mean, you could have one on airmail issues, the opening of airports, well, they're all gonna be philatelic. But generally speaking, if you're looking at postal history, then you would like non-philatelic uses. You want it mailed other than John mailing a letter to Dan to create a cover with this stamp on it.
and judges have a real fine sniffer for that. You know, they can sniff out a philatelic cover, and if you include one, you might want to argue why it's not. For instance, I show some covers in that halfpenny overprint Bermuda exhibit that were, when the halfpenny overprint came out, everybody scarfed up these stamps, including stamp dealers, and they mailed them to their clients. So what I argue is, this wasn't a philatelic cover, this was business correspondence between, you know, the stamp dealer and his client. Well, judges, half of them say, okay. The other half go, whatever. Okay. Good.